Welcome back to the Josh Button Podcast, episode 15. Today is September 12th, and I'm going to talk a little bit about 9/11. Just yesterday I wanted to, and really I was irritated by it because it seems like half my life I've been going back and forth with people about 9/11, and I'm a conspiracy theorist. I am a crazy man for entertaining the idea that our government not only allowed a terrorist attack on our soil, but probably had a great deal to do with it. George Bush, Donald Rumsfeld, you kooks, you traitors or morons. What do you think they are? What do you prefer to believe? Because I think it is a preference at this point. If you do any serious investigation or any lackluster investigation into 9/11, I think it's pretty easy to eliminate the official narrative and the 9/11 Commission's report as complete bogus misinformation and a cover-up. That's exactly what it was, is a cover-up. Not only will you not be able to believe that the perpetrators were managed from a cave in the Middle East by Osama bin Laden, who was on our payroll most of his adult life and was an asset of ours, who was conveniently used over and over and over and over again until he wasn't needed. And then this last ditch blame game, whatever you want to call it, Ponzi. I can't even wrap my head around what to label this CIA operation, because that's what it was, guys. That's what it was. It was an operation on our soil to take away our freedoms and to achieve further control and a few different things that they could knock out with one attack simultaneously. They got us all taking our shoes off at the airport. They got us all standing in line. They got us all giving away more information and giving away more of our privacy and more of our freedoms because of the fear of terror. And there were terrorists involved, but I don't believe that they were the Middle Easterners that we've been led to believe they are. Mohammed Atta and the gang, these party boys that were obviously here for a reason and were assets, but were, in my opinion, in no way, shape, or form capable of pulling this box cutter commissioned terror plot out. It's just mind-boggling that people believe that still. That they were even capable of flying these planes into the towers, that they were capable of hijacking these planes the way that we were told they were, and then flying them into the towers with such precision that would bring down these towers that were built to withstand the exact scenario that they're saying happened. Donald Trump, right after, mentioned the strength and the integrity of these buildings were far too great to be taken down by jet fuel, by crashing jets into them. After the explosions in the basement several years prior, they showed they had structural integrity that was much greater than what we were led to believe after this false flag. And that's what it is. It's a false flag. Lucky Larry Silverstein took out at least 6 weeks before 9/11 on World Trade Center. And he specifically had a terrorism clause in the insurance. It was $3 billion or something crazy like that. And not only did he collect the insurance, he sued to have it paid out twice as two separate terror attacks. If that doesn't get your mind in itself ticking and wondering and inquiring a little bit more, you're asleep at the wheel, man. You are asleep at the wheel. But also the way it was handled by Bush, the way it was portrayed in the media, we were instantly to go to war in the Middle East over this, and we knew who it was instantly right after. This is insane. It's been insane my whole life. And when I bring these conversations up with people, the most insane response is the complete denial and the unwillingness to entertain the idea. And that has happened repeatedly. I am grateful for the momentum that the truther community has created in this last few years, because there is more evidence out there and there are more people that are willing to entertain, especially after you see what lengths the government will go to destroy freedom at this point. But people have opened up to the possibility that we've been lied to more and more, and I don't think there's any escaping that reality. Donald Rumsfeld, the day before 9/11, had a press conference talking about the missing $2.3 trillion at the Pentagon, and it was unaccounted for. And then coincidentally, magically, one of the jets crashed into the exact spot the accounting would be taking place in the Pentagon. The images of the airplane crash were all wiped from from social media, from the internet. You will not be provided the video of that plane crashing because it didn't exist. Most likely it was a missile put into the Pentagon on purpose. There was just so many different things that aligned with this being another false flag or being an inside job that it was inevitable enough people would question this sooner or later, right? I would hope. Maybe it took COVID to really wake up enough people in the masses, so to speak, to the reality that this is nothing new. COVID was not the first false flag. These school shootings that were either A, complete setups or encouraged or facilitated by the FBI were false flags. These kids, nobody talks about the psychotropics that these kids and mass shooters have so happened to have all been prescribed and be on when they pull out these weapons and go to the links that they've gone to, and if they were facilitated or not. But they were most likely facilitated. They were encouraged. They were maybe even set up just to be fall guys, Ponzi, pawns in the great scheme of taking away our guns. Because if you don't believe that that's what they're after with the whole mass shootings and gun control narrative, then you're crazy. You're asleep at the wheel again. They said the passport survived the planes hitting 9/11, and that the planes and the fuel that was burning instantly in those crashes melted the steel beams, which led to the collapse of those buildings. Wrap your head around that for a moment. Go back to Lucky Larry. Why wasn't he present that day? He had breakfast at the top of the towers every single morning. Said his wife had made him a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment or something like that, and that's why he wasn't there. What about the other people that weren't in the building? Coincidentally, almost as if they had been tipped off. There's a documentary out there called The Dancing Israelis. Go check that one out, because there were some Israelis that were detained on 9/11, caught videoing the attack from, I believe, across the Hudson, and were dancing and celebrating. Spies? There was a Israeli art student group who was working in the towers for weeks before 9/11. What were they doing? Go watch the documentary. Go look up there's a handful of documentaries about 9/11 and the inconsistencies in the narrative, and you just go look them up and go entertain yourself. Go entertain yourself. Go watch them for entertainment. And you really, really are forced to wrap your head around the possibilities and the reality of the situation, that we were lied to. Why the lie? In the elementary school that George Bush was in during the attacks, there is a wild video of the moments leading up to it where the teacher was getting these kids to go through some kind of ritual insanity, talking about planes must hit steel, and getting all these kids to recite it and almost chant it in front of George W. Bush. And the looks on his face when he was in that classroom, I mean, they tell a story of themselves. And you need to go see that as well. You need to go back and watch the Donald Rumsfeld video, the press conference. Then think about what happened after 9/11, what we used that for, and the Patriot Act. And then the wars, the foreign wars that were years long, Afghanistan and Iraq, and all of the atrocities that were committed in the Middle East because of 9/11 and because of our war on terror. The war on terror was a war on us just as much as it is the Middle East, because it was dual purposed. It was going to, in the long run, help take away our freedoms, just like it was in the short term destabilizing them. Why pin Muslims against Christians or Muslims against the West? Why destabilize there and incentivize people there to go to war with us? Who's behind this? Who's pulling the strings? Who is the Wizard of Oz? I will tell you one thing I think is very pertinent is understanding who our friends are and who our enemies really are. Because not all of our friends are our friends. And I think we know this from regular life relationships. Some of our friends do not necessarily have our best interest in mind all the time. And in fact, some of our friends only want to remain friends with us so long as they see us doing just about the same as them or not quite as well as them. You start being a better person and making better decisions and being more rational and being more responsible, and you're going to alienate yourself from some relationships. You're going to lose some friends. But in the grand scheme of things, our country needs to know who our friends and who our enemies are really. Who is peddling smut in our country, and are those our friends? Who is brainwashing people via television and programming, and are they our friends? Who is engaged in usury and banking and compounding interest loans, and are they our friends? We had a reconnaissance ship in the Mediterranean called the USS Liberty. This one you need to look up as well. This one you need to check out. Because this ship gathered information that was deemed by our friends, Israel, as incriminating, extremely incriminating. And they attacked the USS Liberty for hours and hours. And we had several losses. You need to go check that one out, because that is a clear indicator that they are not our friends. There has never been justice served for the USS Liberty. The dancing Israelis that were detained were never brought to justice. The people responsible for 9/11 and the people that profited the most from 9/11 have not been brought to justice or held accountable for their actions. And that is unfortunate, as unfortunate gets. And I believe enough of us need to know and openly discuss and have this communication out there so that that can actually happen. I think that if that doesn't happen, deterioration of our rights and freedoms will just consistently get worse. It will consistently dwindle what we thought our country is and should be. Absolutely. There's no way, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no two ways about it. The Pentagon and all involved, Donald Rumsfeld and everyone involved in the $2.3 trillion that was missing, have not been held to account. There has been absolutely no justice served. And most definitely, it needs to happen. All of that led to the Obama presidency. Obama wasn't the first traitor in the White House. And yes, he was a traitor in the White House. Illegitimate in the first place, but then a fraudulent liar all the way across the board. I don't care that he's gay. None of it. Most people do not care that Obama's a gay man. Now that this Larry Sinclair thing has hit, the mainstream with Tucker Carlson, people like myself and truther community has screamed it from the mountaintops. Larry Sinclair had no reason to lie. He had no reason to make up all this really intricate and detailed stories. He had no reason to, no incentive to. And have you thought about that? A lot of people now are coming around to the reality that the Obamas do not have children. Big Mike, Michelle Obama is a man, was a man, however you want to look at it. I don't really care. Show me a picture of Michelle Obama pregnant with either one of their daughters. You can't. Nesbitt is the father, and it is so opaque. The entire story of the Obamas. It is such a script, and it is so opaque. It does not take 10 minutes becoming Michelle Obama. It does not take 10 minutes to see through that stuff. Just go look at the photos of the parents, the actual parents, and compare it to the Obamas. Look at the size of Michelle's shoulders and hands and her next to Obama. Listen to the stories about Obama and his gay affairs and his obsessions with men. And then ask yourself, why did they create this entire narrative to sell him to us, this Manchurian candidate? How is this possible? The media facilitated this for sure. How is it we have so many sellouts and so many puppets in our media, in our government, in Hollywood, banking? Is not the two-tier justice system, is there a two-tiered living system? We need to get to the bottom of that too. We need to understand if there's two tiers of individuals living life in the world and in our country, and it's the haves versus the have-nots. Those that really don't pay for anything and those that pay for everything. And that reality needs to hit home with enough of us have-nots so that we can take their inverted reality and flip it on its head. It's ironic that these institutions and people have talked about a redistribution of wealth, because I believe in it now. When I first was taught or told about this redistribution of wealth philosophy and socialism and all, I thought it was harebrained, especially in America, where you work hard to succeed and you establish yourself as a businessman or whatever, and you do well for yourself. Why would somebody else be able to come along and demand that you give up a larger piece of your pie that you've worked hard for people that don't? But I think we need to reanalyze that and think about the nepotistic environment that we have witnessed and the people that have absolutely no purpose in the positions that they're in. They're inept. They make decisions that are awful for the rest of us. They lie to our faces. Why is that? We need to analyze and interpret exactly what's going on, and I would dare say redistribute the actual wealth in the world, let alone in the United States. Because these people are using mechanisms and methods that are deceitful, that have deceived us for our entire lifetimes. They're in a big club and you ain't in it, once again. This social justice that they're referring to has nothing to do with social justice. If social justice were actually going to happen, you would see that 1% stripped of everything that was gained unmorally, immorally, and illegally. Redistribute that. As you see Vanguard and BlackRock and all these investment institutions at the very, very elite level outbidding Americans for their homes and grabbing up assets and land. Who are they? Who are their shareholders? And why so much in the hands of so few? That is what we need to address. But we're not going to get there until we analyze and interpret the lies that they've fed us across the board. 9/11 was one of the biggest frauds on the world and on the world stage in all of our lifetimes. And it needs to be addressed, not remembered, not we will not forget. Justice needs to be served. And people need to be held accountable for atrocious actions and atrocity. God forgive us for what we did in the Middle East. God forgive us. And shame on us for not analyzing it and interpreting closer in the moment as opposed to having the emotional response that they wanted from us. 9/11 was important for me my entire life because I was there. I was in New York City, downtown. Ironically, I was living in a model's apartment. A roommate and myself went to Best Buy the night before. He bought a camcorder. He plugged it in. My mom called me on the morning of 9/11 and said, "Hey, there's a plane in World Trade Center." And I was like, "What? No, that's impossible." She was like, "No, really. Turn on the news." And we turned the news on real quick, and we see the smoke coming from the first tower. And instantly, we went up to the roof. We were on Houston and Elizabeth, which is not very far away from Wall Street. We went to the roof. We saw what was going on, and my roommate at the time, Jimmy, said, "Oh, I got the camera. Go get it, dude." He put that camera on the corner of the building and filmed from the second attack on until those buildings went down. And just the sheer irony and timing of it all. And it was so impactful. It was like watching a movie. The response was absolutely mind-boggling. The amount of cars, unmarked, fire, just the alarmed response, rushing down Broadway and shutting down the streets from that neighborhood and south. And I had friends that were actually down there really close that were coming up and meeting up with us throughout the day. And I knew everybody, we didn't know that it wasn't a terror attack, but we knew something wasn't right. Something wasn't right. You know, it didn't sit right with us. A lot of us were talking about how weird it was and where did all of these responders, these first responders come from? Because like I'm saying, the response was almost out of a movie. The sirens did not stop. The unmarked vehicles flooding to downtown New York did not stop. It was unbelievable. It was all shocking, very shocking for sure. My life changed that day as well as all the other New Yorkers and all Americans, and I'm sure anybody that was witnessing it and was old enough to be cognizant of what was going on. Our lives changed that day. We were stripped of something. We were stripped of something, and we were led to be insecure in many ways. And the world changed that day. And the people that were responsible for this lied to our faces. They used it. They planned it and used it against us. It was war against all of us, against our psychology, against our freedom, and against our country. I will never forget, but I will never, ever stop demanding justice for this. Get the rope. Get the gallows. Get Gitmo full and televise the trials of these war criminals. These are crimes against humanity. This was not a terror attack, although it was a terror attack, domestic, and most likely concocted and driven by Zionists. Israel had a lot to do with this. Mossad had a lot to do with this. We will never forget that. Just like we won't forget the USS Liberty. Ladies and gentlemen, Israel is not our friends. Those responsible for the implementation and the land grab that created Israel are not our friends. We need to analyze and interpret anything and everything they've ever told us, taught us. We need to. The world will not change until we do. This was heretical. What they do to Palestinians in Israel is what they will do to all of us. We are all Palestinians. You need to understand that. We are all in the way. We are all nothing but slaves, and we are to be subservient and to acquiesce to their demands, or they have shown you the brutality that they will take to make examples of us and to eliminate us. Just because you're an American does not mean you are untouchable to the people that have proven over and over and over again we cannot trust them. We need to know who our friends are. We need to reanalyze and interpret, and we need to be open to the reality that we've been manipulated and lied to for a long, long time. I'm Josh Button. This was 9/11, a look back, and an engagement in the present. Ladies and gentlemen, we must demand justice. I'll see you for episode 16 really soon. Have a good day.